If I were to ask you, who is the female version of Elvis? Many of you guys, without looking at this title, I guarantee would not comment below Anne Margret. Comment below if you even know who Anne Margret is. For many of you watching, this is going to be your first encounter on hearing about who Anne Margret is. But she is a legend in the ranks of that of a Marilyn Monroe, Rita Hayworth. In her day, she was such a big deal. There was a mania surrounded around her popularity. SNL even did a sketch for her that is so funny, but she was really a big deal. But I know for our generation, the newer generation, many have not heard of her yet. She is still with us today and living, and I want you guys to leave some flower emojis in the comments for her as we dive deep into who was the scandalous female version of Elvis. She has a very powerful story of triumph, sorrow, and the scandalous affair that she had with the king of pop himself, Elvis Presley. Yes, she had an affair with Elvis Presley to the point where it drove Priscilla Presley crazy. And if you guys are familiar with how Priscilla Presley looks, like I'm putting some images of Priscilla Presley on screen, isn't it crazy how much you cannot tell the difference between Priscilla Presley and Anne Margret? Elvis had a thing with dating women that looked exactly alike. He definitely had a type, because I did my Deborah Paget video. He also was in love with Deborah, and she looked just like Priscilla and Anne Margret too. I'm going to pin her videos in the comment for you guys to check out. But we're going to talk about this scandal because, oof. But first, before we get into it all, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Queen Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get in this video. We're going to start off with her childhood, then go on to her career, and then talk about the affairs, etc., and some of the troubles that she went through. And we're going to wrap it up in a very positive, fun way, where we deep dive into her beauty secrets also and how she looks this fabulous. Because I mean, wouldn't you want to know her beauty secrets? She's gorgeous. Let's start with her childhood. In the thick of World War II, while Europe was being torn apart by conflict, with countries like Norway, Poland, and Sweden fearing invasion, a new life began. Anne Margret Olsen entered the world in Stockholm, Sweden on April 28, 1941. Her mother, Anna, just 21, was the quiet type, while her dad, Gustav, was more of the adventurous sort, making a living as an electrician. The birth of their daughter filled them with joy, but the war looming over them would soon pull their little family apart. By 1942, with jobs hard to come by, Gustav made the tough decision to head to America in search of work, leaving Anna and young Anne Margret to move to Balshabin, a small town dangerously close to Nazi-controlled Norway. Despite the tension, the presence of state military in the town provided some sense of security. Soldiers off duty found warmth and entertainment at the family's village cafe. Enchanted by little Anne Margret's performances of Swedish folk songs her mother had taught her, they even took song requests. These moments of joy were a silver lining during such dark times. It wasn't until 1946, after the war had ended, that the Olsen family could finally be together again. Anna and Anne Margret embarked on a new beginning, crossing the ocean to New York City. The reunion with Gustav was magical, and as a celebratory gesture, he treated Anne Margret to her first movie experience at the Grand Radio City Music Hall, complete with a stage show featuring the Rockettes. The magic of music and performance sparked something in her that would never fade. The family's next chapter began in Chicago, specifically in the suburb of Fox Lake, where Gustav had set up their new home. They were greeted by relatives who had migrated before the war, enveloping them in a loving and supportive community. Despite quickly picking up English, Anne Margret found herself becoming shy and introverted in this unfamiliar land. Her parents, noticing her struggle, signed her up for dance classes. It wasn't long before Anne Margret's natural talent began to shine through, each class building her confidence and ambition. Her desire to excel and make her parents proud was very strong, with her mother, despite their financial hardships, dedicating herself to making all of Anne Margret's costumes. Times were tough, with Anna taking up house cleaning in Fox Lake to afford these lessons and support her daughter's burgeoning talent.
In 1941, Europe was in the throes of World War II. and Sweden's border pulsed with the threat of occupation. It was in Stockholm, Sweden, that Anne Margret Olsen was born on April 28, 1941. The happy, loving couple were thrilled by the arrival of their only child, but as the war raged on around them, the tight-knit family was forced to separate. It would take the end of the war to reunite the Olsen family. In 1946, after a 4-year separation, Anna and Anne Margret boarded the steamship Gripsholm, bound for New York City and a new life in the United States. It was a joyous reunion for the 5-year-old and her father. Next stop was Chicago, where Anne Margret's father had made a home in the suburb of Fox Lake. There, they were welcomed by a loving and supportive group of relatives who had left Sweden before the war. Though she learned English quickly, the little girl was growing timid and withdrawn in her new homeland. Her parents enrolled her in dance classes. The budding dancer had talent and grew more poised and self-assured with each class.
Disaster struck when Gustav suffered a severe accident, rendering him unable to work and displacing the family from their home. Faced with desperation, Anna took a job as a secretary in a funeral home, which provided them with a place to stay. Little Anne Margret had to sleep every night close to coffins waiting for burial.
But when she was 11 years old, Gustav was injured in a serious accident that turned the Olsens' world upside down. Desperate, her mother took a job as a secretary in a funeral home in exchange for lodging. Anne Margret had to sleep near the caskets awaiting the next day's burial.
The grim situation somehow brought the family even closer together. It was nearly a year before Gustav fully recovered, marking yet another storm the immigrant Olsen family had weathered together, their bonds stronger than ever. In 1955, Anne Margret stepped into the halls of New Trier High School in Illinois, a place famed for churning out stars like Rock Hudson and Heston. By then, this aspiring dancer was already making waves with her voice, shining in school plays and tearing up the local talent scene. At just 16, she snagged a spot on Ted Mack's Original Amateur Hour, a big-time national talent show, while her peers were still figuring out their future.
When you shoot out with something lips, then their eyes, you'd better watch them if you're wise.
Anne Margret had her eyes set on the spotlight. "I'm hitting Chicago to snag myself an agent," she told her mom, brimming with the kind of confidence you can't teach. And just like that, at 16, she found herself an agent and started singing in local clubs and events. But it wasn't just her voice turning heads. As she blossomed, so did her stage presence. Senior year saw her sizzle on stage in a tight chartreuse dress, belting Heat Wave. With a sultry vibe straight out of Rita Hayworth's Playbook, which I did a video for Rita Hayworth also. She was a hit, thrilling the crowd while ruffling some feathers with her steamy performance from some parents. So some parents thought she was just a little too sexy, and was a little turned off by it. Fast forward to 17, and there's Anne Margret wrestling with her dual identity. On one side, the shy, reserved girl. On the other, the fiery performer ready to set the stage ablaze. This duality was something she began to own, becoming Annie, the stage persona, whenever she performed. She adapted an alter ego, the two Annes. One would come up and take over when she was on stage and had a sexy persona, while the other was her real self, shy and reserved, kind of like Beyoncé's Sasha Fierce. Then came 1959, and Anne Margret found herself at Northwestern University's prestigious drama department. Not one to sit still, she became the lead singer of a campus band called the Subtle Tones. Their local success caught the eye of Vegas promoters, and by 1960, with her folks' worried blessings, Anne Margret and the Subtle Tones set off for Vegas. But their dreams hit a curve when their performance was canceled upon arrival. Undeterred, they made a beeline for Hollywood, convinced they'd find their break there. And they did, playing trendy nightclubs within weeks. But the real game changer, catching the eye of a talent agent who landed Anne Margret an audition with none other than George Burns. She dazzled him with renditions of Mac the Knife and Bill Bailey, and just like that, she was in his Vegas show. The 1960 George Burns Christmas Revue catapulted her into the limelight, earning rave reviews from Hollywood's elite. This led to an RCA record deal, a jaw-dropping 14-page spread in Life magazine, and a screen test with 20th Century Fox.
The 1960 George Burns Christmas Revue was enormously popular with Hollywood's elite. The fresh-faced and energetic singer was showcased to many of the industry's heavy hitters. The show led to an RCA record contract, an unprecedented 14-page feature in Life magazine, and a screen test for 20th Century Fox.
Was that really the first drink you ever had?
Whiskey?
Uh-huh.
Don't be silly. I've had lots of drinks. I'm a as restless as a willow in a windstorm.
At only 19 years of age, Anne Margaret had made a grand entrance into show business, but nothing could prepare her or America for the whirlwind that would follow.
Suddenly, everyone was talking. How did a newcomer score such massive breaks so fast? Was it just her undeniable talent, or was it something more? Perhaps something scandalous that was opening these massive doors in Hollywood for her. Rumors swirled of behind-the-scenes activities favoring her rise, and regardless of the whispers, one thing was clear: Anne Margret was on the fast track to stardom, and nothing was going to slow her down. At just 19, Anne Margret didn't just step into Hollywood. She barged in with a bang, securing a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox. This was no small feat for a girl straight out of Illinois who decided it was time her folks got a taste of Los Angeles life with her. But even with this dazzling entry, no one, not Anne Margret, not America, could guess the storm of fame that was about to hit. Fast forward to 1961, our 20-year-old star is soaking up the glam, the kind of attention that had her sharing the stage with George Burns on The Jack Benny Show. Her film debut was a modest role in Frank Capra's Pocketful of Miracles, starring Bette Davis. Yet it was her performance of Bachelor in Paradise at the Academy Awards in 1962 that truly put her on the map, introducing her talent to a whopping 40 million viewers. The folks at 20th Century Fox had their eyes on her for the wholesome lead, and their State Fair remark, Anne Margret snagged the role of Emily, the fiery siren, instead. Director Jose Ferrer decided to amp up his allure, transforming her long brown hair into a fiery shade of orange that became her trademark. The color suited her very well. The studio had big dreams for her, hinting at filling the shoes left by Marilyn Monroe. They envisioned her as the next sex symbol, and Anne Margret did not disappoint. Her portrayal of Emily captivated everyone, etching her image as the ultimate sex kitten, albeit with a twist. And of course, and off-screen, she was nothing but professional, a stark contrast to her steamy on-screen persona. And despite State Fair not killing it at the box office, Anne Margret won over critics and audiences alike. Then came Bye Bye Birdie, co-starring Dick Van Dyke, Janet Leigh, and Bobby Rydell. This film, which was mocking America's Elvis Presley's craze, catapulted Anne Margret into the stratosphere of fame. Its premiere at Radio City Music Hall on April 5, 1963 was nothing short of historic, out-earning any film in the venue's 30-year run. Suddenly, Anne Margret mania was everywhere, leading to an avalanche of film offers and even her being immortalized as Anne Margrock in The Flintstones.
That same year, she was immortalized as Anne Margrock on what was then a primetime hit show, The Flintstones.
Her skyrocketing fame didn't stop there. It reached all the way to the White House with an invitation to sing at President John F. Kennedy's private birthday party in 1963, a year after Marilyn Monroe's iconic Happy Birthday performance. The moment Anne Margret met Elvis Presley, it was like two stars colliding in the most spectacular way. Both were at the pinnacle of the teen film revolution, their careers skyrocketing to stardom at breakneck speed. They were more than just a stunning pair. They shared a deep love for family, craved privacy away from the relentless gaze of the public, and both had a wild side, especially when it came to motorcycles. Their connection was so fiery that early release photos of them in a film's wedding scene had fans and magazines buzzing with talks of a real wedding. But behind the scenes, their relationship was deeply private and special, lacking any real plans for marriage. Anyone who watched them together could feel the intense magnetism that wasn't just limited to the screen. Soon enough, whispers of a passionate affair were everywhere, but the romance hit rocky ground when rumors surfaced about Anne Margret spilling to the press about their love and possible future marriage. True or not, these rumors stirred up a storm because Elvis had Priscilla waiting in the wings at Graceland, having promised her and her family a wedding. Elvis had envisioned a life with a traditional Southern-style wife devoted entirely to him, a role Priscilla fit perfectly. Anne Margret, with her fiery spirit, ambition, and fame, was a force to be reckoned with. Described as the female Elvis,
He is a dynamic live performer. More than any female that I can think of, Anne was the female Elvis.
She represented a challenge, an equal that Elvis perhaps was not ready to face. And despite their deep affection, Anne Margaret's public comments cornered Elvis into making a tough decision, leading him to end their affair. Not long after, he married Priscilla, while Anne Margaret found happiness with Roger Smith, marrying him just a week later in a union that would last. Elvis' affection for Anne Margaret remained. In a gesture of love and respect, he sent her a guitar-shaped flower arrangement on every opening night of her Las Vegas show, a tradition he never failed to uphold. It was the absence of this gesture on August 16, 1977, that signaled to Anne Margaret something was wrong. Confirming their deep bond, she received a personal call from Graceland informing her of Elvis' death before the news broke publicly. Back in 1977, at a time when hearts were heavy and tears flowed freely, Priscilla Presley and Anne Margaret Olsen found themselves standing together from grief at Elvis Presley's funeral. If you'd follow the Elvis saga, you'd know Anne Margaret was often seen as the other woman, the one who stirred up quite a bit of drama between Elvis and Priscilla. The newspapers had a field day with stories about their affair, driving Priscilla to the brink of madness and making her voice her hate for Anne Margaret loud and clear. But then came the funeral, a moment where past grievances seemed to melt away. Among the sea of mourners at Graceland was Anne Margaret, there to say her goodbyes to Elvis. She made it a point to approach Priscilla, offering condolences that were so heartfelt Priscilla couldn't help but feel a connection she never expected. Priscilla opened up about this encounter, mentioning how Anne Margaret, alongside her husband Roger Smith, was genuinely sympathetic. Anne expressed her sympathy so sincerely, I felt a genuine bond with her, Priscilla recalled. This was a big deal, considering the bad blood between them. The rumors of Elvis' fling with Anne Margaret had been the source of much heartache for Priscilla, especially after rumors about a supposed proposal made rounds. The frustration had gotten so bad that at one point, Priscilla had erupted. What's going on here? I'm tired of these secrets. Telephone calls, notes, newspapers, and in a fit of anger, Priscilla had even thrown a vase against a wall shouting, I hate her. Why doesn't she keep her ASS in Sweden where she belongs? End quote. See, Anne and Elvis were constantly exchanging notes and having secret phone calls, according to Priscilla, and Priscilla felt she had sacrificed so much to be with Elvis that she was not about to deal with another woman who was a lookalike of her. Elvis would brush off the rumors, but he also dropped a bombshell on Priscilla. He expected her to cope with whispers of infidelity. He wanted her to understand that it came with the territory of being married to someone as famous as him. She was imagining things, and these rumors meant nothing. They were only rumors. Despite this, Priscilla tried to shove down her resentment towards Anne Margaret. Time marched on, and both Anne Margaret and Elvis moved on with other partners, yet they kept in touch, sharing a bond too deep to sever. Anne Margaret loved Elvis profoundly, dubbing him her soulmate, a sentiment she echoed even after his death. I will never recover from Elvis' death, she wrote in her memoir. He is a part of me, of my happiness and sorrow, and that will never go away. It's rare to have such a friend as Elvis, rare to have such a soulmate, end quote. Anne Margaret's marriage to Roger Smith was long and happy, lasting until his death in 2017, but still, she looks back on her history with Elvis not just with fondness, but as a defining chapter of her life. She still speaks of him today as if he was her true soulmate. And I just have a question for you guys. If you were famous, an actor, like both you and your spouse was famous, do you think you'd be able to witness, like, Anne Margaret was in a movie with Elvis and they were kissing, all in love, the chemistry and all of that? How would you deal with that? Like, you got to be a really tough soldier to deal with something like that. And then Elvis was using that to be like, hey, don't worry about it. It's just all business, this and that. But then behind the scenes, he was in love with Anne Margaret. So it was something. But Priscilla was making herself believe it was just work. How would you guys deal with that? That is just tough. I can't even imagine. After the runway success of Viva Las Vegas, Anne Margaret found herself stuck in a slew of unappealing movies, projects she had signed up for without even glancing at the scripts. Movies like The Pleasure Seekers and Kitten with a Whip were far cries from the hits she was known for. At just 24, her career seemed to be on a downward spiral, caught in a vortex of mediocre films that left both fans and critics scratching their heads, wondering what happened to the vibrant star they adored. Determined to bounce back and shed her pigeonholed image, Margret was ecstatic when she was cast alongside Bing Crosby, Red Buttons, and Stephanie Powers in a glitzy remake of the 1939 classic western Stagecoach. The role of Dallas, the saloon girl, was a golden opportunity for her to showcase her versatility, but the pressure was intense. The studio, the critics, everyone seemed to have sky-high expectations, and Margret felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Despite giving it her all, Stagecoach failed to make a mark, pushing her career further into jeopardy. At 25, the woman who once was Hollywood's darling faced a daunting task. She needed to prove that she was not just a one-trick pony, but a bona fide movie star. In an attempt to reignite her career, she starred in The Swinger, a musical comedy. However, it turned out to be yet another film that did more to exploit her sex symbol image than to showcase her talent. The fear that her career might be over started to loom large. Adding insult to injury, her husband Roger discovered that despite the fortunes she had earned, Margret was drowning in debt due to poor financial management. Desperate to turn things around, she took to the stage in Las Vegas, headlining her own show. On June 7, 1967, she dazzled audiences at the Rivera Hotel with a sold-out stand-room-only performance. But even after a smashing success in Vegas, Hollywood still wasn't calling with the roles she yearned for. In an effort to keep the wheels turning, she made a few films in Italy where she was very popular. Yet back in Hollywood, she needed a breakthrough. That's when Roger and his business partner, Alan Carr, stepped in, taking a step to manage Margret's declining career. They managed to secure a deal with CBS for the Margret Show, a one-hour variety special. The networks were skeptical at first, unsure if she still had the star power America had fallen in love with since she hadn't sung or danced on film in ages. But the gamble paid off. The Margret Show was a hit, pulling in sensational ratings and proving that America's interest in Margret wasn't just a thing of the past. The critical success gave her the professional boost she desperately needed, breathing new life into her career. In the world of cinema back in 1970, the name on everyone's lips was Mike Nichols. He was on the hunt for the perfect bombshell to star in his daring new film, Carnal Knowledge. After going through 18 actresses without that aha moment, it struck him, Margret's electrifying performance in Kitten with a Whip was unforgettable. He knew she was the one to bring Bobby Templeton to life, a character whose life is turned upside down by her own sensuality and the men who betray her.
She got her chance in 1971 when director Mike Nichols cast her opposite Jack Nicholson as his tragic lover in Carnal Knowledge.
The reason I sleep all day is because I can't stand my life. What life? Sleeping all day!
Landing this role was a game changer for Margret. It was the shot in the arm her career desperately needed. But boy, was she in for a ride. The role of Bobby was like nothing she tackled before, pushing her to the limits emotionally and physically. It was a pretty dark film. It hit her hard, taking on a life of its own, and to cope, she started popping sleeping pills to get some rest after the intense filming days. Before she knew it, she was hooked, and tossing alcohol into the mix only made things spiral further. Kind of like a Heath Ledger moment, you know?
She had been taking sleeping pills at the time to get to sleep after doing these harrowing things, which becomes an addiction, and drinking, all these things together, and it was causing problems.
When she was finished, she was an emotional wreck because she takes everything to heart. She was so immersed in that character.
But the successful return to Vegas did nothing to calm or control Margret's growing anxiety. Alcohol and sleeping pills had now become an addiction for the singer, and she knew that she needed help.
By the time filming wrapped up, Margret was a shadow of herself, emotionally drained from pouring everything she had into Bobby. And despite Carnal Knowledge being a hit, raking in great reviews and smashing the box office, Margret couldn't shake off the heaviness the role left her with. She thought getting back on stage in Las Vegas would help her find her footing again, but it barely scratched the surface of her growing anxiety. The mix of alcohol and sleeping pills had become a crutch she couldn't do without. Margret wasn't one to air her dirty laundry in public, so she kept her struggles locked away. telling herself she'd face them head on and conquer them, away from the prying eyes of the world. With the unwavering support of her husband, she sought professional help, committing wholeheartedly to recovery and sobriety. Her personal battle had its silver lining when, in February 1972, she received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for Carnal Knowledge. Even though the award went to Clarice Leachman, just being recognized was a victory. At 30, Margret had finally broken through, earning the critical acclaim she's been chasing after improving to everyone, and perhaps more importantly to herself, that she was a force to be reckoned with in drama, not just a pretty face. Margret was gearing up to knock everyone's socks off with her latest Vegas-style show, this time at the Sahara Hotel in Lake Tahoe. For her grand entry, she planned something spectacular. She'd be on a platform 22 feet up in the air, all set to be gracefully lowered down to the stage. Sounds pretty epic, but then out of nowhere, disaster struck. The platform got all wobbly, tipped, and then completely flipped, sending Margret crashing down to the floor. At that very moment, Margret was also dealing with her dad's fight against cancer. It was a tough time for her, but falling off that platform made her even more determined. She was like, I'm going to beat this. I need to get back on stage to show my dad that I'm okay. And her husband really helped her to bounce back. He was really there for her.
Margret was putting on yet another Vegas-style spectacular. For her grand entrance, she stood on a platform 22 feet above the audience and waited to be lowered to the stage. But without warning, the platform tipped, wobbled, and flipped over, hurling Margret to the floor. For the first time since they were married, Roger was not present at the show. He was notified in the early hours of the morning at their Los Angeles home. Frantic and unable to get a commercial flight, he stole a twin-engine Cessna and piloted himself to Lake Tahoe at breakneck speed. Roger checked her out of the hospital and flew her back to Los Angeles in the stolen plane. The injured singer was in a coma for 4 days. When she awoke with her jaw wired shut, Roger was by her side.
It was 2.5 months after that near fatal fall. She was back at it, lighting up the Las Vegas Hilton in her comeback show. But life threw another curveball her way. Just when she was getting her groove back, her father passed away on February 7th, 1973, after battling with cancer for a year. Growing up in a loving family, losing her dad hit her hard. She spiraled into a deep depression, and at one point, things got so bad that she downed a whole bottle of painkillers. Terrified by what she had done, she reached out to her therapist, who, along with her husband, jumped into action to get her the discreet, urgent care she needed. For the first time in her whirlwind career, Margret pressed pause and took a 6-month break. She and her husband bought a place in Malibu and started focusing on raising his kids from a previous marriage, which brought her immense joy. Yet, amidst this newfound happiness, she felt a longing for a child of her own. Despite all these efforts, consultations with doctors, and heart-to-heart talks with experts, their dream of having a baby remained unfulfilled. It was a crushing blow. She said it was one of the biggest regrets of her life.
At 32 years old, the veteran performer realized that she desperately wanted to have a child of her own.
She tried to have a baby, and they tried, and they went to doctors, and they spoke to people, and they did everything because they both wanted this. It just didn't happen.
One thing in the world that I think Annie regrets, it's probably not having any children. I think it was a huge disappointment.
Then out of the blue, director Ken Russell came calling with an opportunity that would lift up her spirits. He offered her a role in Tommy, playing one of the most memorable and daring mothers in film history. This role was nothing like she'd done before. It was a challenge she was looking for. Audiences worldwide couldn't get enough of her in Tommy. Not only did she snag a Golden Globe for Best Actress, but she also landed her second Oscar nomination. Margret, the movie star, was back in full force, throwing herself into TV specials, live shows, and movies alongside Hollywood's elite. In a heartfelt interview in 2012, Margret shared how important her faith and her relationship with God and Jesus Christ have been throughout her life and her long career. She said that the beauty of nature and the thought of reuniting with her parents in the afterlife have been her driving force. All my life, I've had this feeling deep inside of me, my faith and my feelings. I mean, you go outside and you see flowers, you see the trees, you see all your loved ones, and then you think of who created it all. She described her relationship with God and with Jesus Christ as something which is really important to me, end quote. And on May 14, 2022, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas recognized her incredible life and contributions with an honorary doctoral degree in human letters. Today at 83, Margret is still a stunning force of nature, giving interviews, living life to its fullest, and just being fabulous. I really bet that her parents would have been bursting with pride of just the longevity she has allowed herself to be relevant and just really make her mark. But to end this on a fun note, let's break down some of her beauty secrets real quick. And she sat down with our favorite beauty journalist, Lydia Lane, in 1965 and spilled all the tea on her routine. She told Lydia, and I quote, "You have to understand individuality. It certainly is not dressing to make yourself stand out like a bandaged thumb or to get stuck in a groove. You have to decide what impression you want to make. I think one reason so many people conform is because they are unsure and make no effort to build confidence." And Margret's hair is one of her most distinctive features, and she said, "It is on the oily side, so I am very disciplined about keeping it clean. I wash it before it gets dirty." But beauty is not everything, as she stated. She goes on to say, "I think personality attracts a man, but an ability to listen holds him. Rattling on and on about a lot of nothing quickly bores a man. Boys and men are comfortable around girls who are relaxed and comfortable with them. Use your individuality here too without trying to make an impression." End quote. Now, when it comes to her workout and diet, she says, "I work out 3 times a week, and then I have a group on Saturday mornings that go for walks, and the youngest in the group is about 38 and the oldest is 86. And we all go to different places." She also loves cookies, but she tries to eat as clean as possible, especially as she has gotten older. But throughout the years, one of her signature thing was definitely her hair color, the orange hair color. So she really, even now, her hair is still fabulous. Like, she aged with putting a lot of emphasis on hair and more of a natural makeup, extenuating what you already have, the beauty that you already have. But wow, what a woman, right? What are your thoughts? Comment them below, and also comment below who else would you guys like me to do a video for. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.